The morning sun over Windsor Castle painted a golden hue across the sprawling estate, but inside Adelaide Cottage, the atmosphere was thick with the tension of a normal family morning. The Prince and Princess of Wales were overseeing the final frantic minutes before the school run, a ritual that, despite their royal status, was remarkably ordinary. Princess Charlotte, with her signature cheeky grin, was fastening her blazer, her school bag packed with the usual items, pencils, books, and a half-finished art project. For Prince William, these moments were sacred. Having experienced a childhood fractured by the public divorce of his parents and the relentless scrutiny of the press, he and Catherine had fought hard to create a protective bubble of normalcy around their children. Lambrook School, with its sprawling 52-acre grounds and focus on outdoor learning, was a key part of that vision. It was a place where George could be just another student, where Charlotte's confidence could flourish away from the cameras, and where little Louis could chase his friends in the playground without a protection officer hovering nearby. But the peace of that morning was about to be shattered by a decision made miles away in the opulent corridors of Clarence House. The children piled into the family's Audi SUV, unaware of the undercurrents that often swirled around the adult world they were too young to understand. As they drove through the gated security checkpoint, a member of the Royal Protection Command noted their departure time in a logbook. It was a routine entry for what was expected to be a routine day. Meanwhile, at Clarence House, Queen Camilla was reviewing her schedule. Her diary was, as always, meticulously planned. There were charity meetings concerning her vital work with domestic violence survivors, a cause she championed with a quiet ferocity that surprised many who had only known her through the scandalous lens of the past. But there was also a private matter to attend to, one that required absolute discretion. For months, there had been whispers in the royal household about a potential joint engagement, a family-oriented event that would showcase the unity of the monarchy. It would involve the king, the queen, the prince and princess of Wales, and crucially, the children. The planning had been fraught with difficulty. William and Catherine were fiercely protective of their children's privacy and had previously declined similar requests. They believed that public events should be reserved for rare, formal occasions like the Trooping the Color balcony appearance, not spontaneous daytime engagements. However, the palace communications team felt it was vital to show a new, modern, and united family front. And it was suggested that an impromptu visit to the children's school, perhaps to see a project they were working on, would provide a perfect photo opportunity without seeming too staged. Camilla, understanding the importance of the optics, and perhaps eager to strengthen her bond with her step-grandchildren, allegedly took it upon herself to facilitate the plan, believing that once the wheels were in motion, William and Catherine would have to agree for the sake of family unity. She picked up the phone, making a call to the Lambrook School Administration, a call that would set off a chain of events no one had anticipated. The request was presented as a royal wish, to have Princess Charlotte brought out of class for a private family moment that would be captured for posterity. The school, caught between the deference owed to the crown and their duty of care to a pupil, agreed, unaware that they were stepping into a parental minefield. At Lambrook, the afternoon lessons were in full swing. Princess Charlotte was in her classroom, likely engaged in one of the many activities the school prided itself on. Lambrook was not just about academic rigor, it emphasized kindness, resilience, and creativity. Charlotte, by all accounts, was thriving. Teachers described her as a confident and popular student, not because she was a princess, but because she was reportedly bossy in the most charming way. A natural leader who organized games in the playground and looked out for her younger brother, Louis. She was in her element, far from the formality of palace life, just another 8-year-old navigating friendships and times tables. The school's approach to friendship was notably progressive. Children were encouraged to have a wide circle of friends rather than a single best friend to prevent anyone from feeling left out. It was a philosophy that aligned perfectly with William and Catherine's desire for Charlotte to have a grounded and inclusive upbringing. The peace of this environment was broken by a gentle knock on the classroom door. A member of the school staff whispered to the teacher, who then looked toward Charlotte with a kind but curious expression. The young princess was told to gather her things, that she was being collected for a special surprise. Thinking perhaps her parents had arrived early for an unexpected treat, Charlotte complied with the easy trust of a child. She was led away from her peers, her books left open on her desk, a quiet murmur of speculation following her out of the room. She was taken not to the main reception, but to a quieter part of the school, where a royal vehicle from the Queen's convoy was waiting, a scenario that bypassed the usual protocols involving her personal protection officers, and who were operating on the assumption that the children were safely in class for the rest of the day. Back in Windsor, the first inkling of a problem reached a member of William's staff. A routine check with the Royalty Protection Squad assigned to the children revealed an anomaly. Charlotte's location status had changed without the required authorization from her parents. Initially, there was confusion. Had Catherine picked her up early for a dentist appointment? Was a quick call to the Princess of Wales confirmed she had not? The confusion rapidly turned to concern, then to a cold, sharp shock of alarm. Catherine immediately tried to contact the school, but the lines seemed to be tied up with internal calls. William, who was in a meeting, was pulled out by his private secretary. And the look on his face as he heard the news that his daughter had been removed from school without his or his wife's consent was described by an aide present as a mixture of disbelief and barely controlled fury. The security protocols, designed to be the most robust in the world, had been circumvented not by a terrorist or a kidnapper, but by a member of his own family. The sense of violation was profound. For William, this wasn't just about a breach of protocol. It was about the fundamental trust and safety of his child. He immediately thought of his own mother, Diana, and her battles with the institution to give him and Harry a normal life, and how those battles were often undermined by the very people meant to support them. The ghosts of the past felt dangerously close. Without hesitation, he made a decision that required no deliberation. The Royal Guard, the close protection team whose sole purpose was to safeguard the young royals, was activated. And they moved with practiced, silent efficiency, their vehicles peeling away from their posts, heading toward the school. Their orders were simple and absolute: locate Princess Charlotte and secure her safety. They were not just following procedure, they were following a father's command. The stakes were immeasurably high, not just for the family, but for the future of the monarchy itself. The Royal Guard convoy arrived at Lambrook with a presence that was impossible to ignore. They didn't blare sirens, but the low, powerful hum of their vehicles and the purposeful stride of the officers sent a clear message. This was a recovery operation. The school, which had been quietly buzzing with the excitement of a royal visit, suddenly went still. Teachers peered from windows, and the headmaster was summoned to the entrance, his face pale as he realized the gravity of the situation he had unwittingly enabled. And he had acted on what he believed was a legitimate request from the highest echelons of the royal family, not understanding the intricate and fiercely guarded boundaries William and Catherine had established. The protection officers, led by a senior commander who had served for decades, didn't pause for explanations. They moved past the headmaster and toward the location where they had tracked the Queen's vehicle. Meanwhile, at that location, perhaps a quiet garden within the school grounds or a private room, Charlotte was with Camilla. The meeting, whatever its intention, was likely awkward. Charlotte, though polite and well-trained, was likely confused. She was with her step-grandmother, but without her parents. The easy, natural warmth she would have shown with her mother or father was replaced by the polite reserve of a child in an unexpected formal situation. Camilla, perhaps sensing the discomfort, may have tried to bridge the gap, talking about ponies or school, but the underlying tension was palpable. This was not a bonding moment. It was an extraction, and before any photographs could be taken or any meaningful conversation could be had, the door opened. The royal guard had arrived. The lead officer stepped forward, his expression impassive, but his posture firm. With the utmost respect, he informed the Queen that he was there to escort Princess Charlotte back to her parents, and it was not a request. It was the execution of his duty. The scene was fraught with unspoken implications. A queen, consort to the king, was being effectively overruled by the security detail of her stepson. In that moment, the chain of command was clear. The safety and parental rights of the Prince and Princess of Wales superseded all else. Charlotte was safely returned to Adelaide Cottage, the tension in her small body visibly melting away the moment she saw her mother's arms open wide. The reunion was private and emotional, a stark contrast to the institutional formality she had just experienced. William, having received confirmation from his team that she was safe, felt the adrenaline-fueled rage subside, replaced by a deep and simmering anger. For Catherine, the shock was deeply personal. The idea that someone could walk into her daughter's school and remove her was a nightmare scenario, the kind that kept parents of public figures awake at night. In the hours that followed, the Windsor household was a fortress of quiet, controlled fury. Phone calls were made, not just between William and his father, the king, but between lawyers and private secretaries. The king, caught between his wife and his son, faced an impossible situation. The palace machine, which usually excelled at spinning narratives and smoothing over family discord, was paralyzed. This was not a leak to the press or a minor disagreement over royal duties. And this was a fundamental breach of trust involving the most vulnerable members of the family. Inside the walls of Clarence House, the mood was equally tense. Camilla's staff, who had likely orchestrated the logistics of the school visit, were in damage control mode. The narrative they had hoped to create, a heartwarming image of a modern, blended family, had backfired spectacularly. Instead of a photo of a smiling queen with her step-granddaughter, the reality was a hard stare-down between royal protocol and parental authority, with the royal guard acting as the decisive line of defense for the Wales family. The unspoken question hanging over everyone was, how did it come to this? The answer lay in the complex web of family history, institutional pressure, and the fierce protectiveness of parents who were determined to break the cycle of royal childhood trauma. In the days and weeks that followed, the incident became an unspoken scar within the family. There were no public statements, no official apologies. The unity shown on the Buckingham Palace balcony remained intact for the public, a carefully curated image of stability. But behind the gilded doors, the dynamics had permanently shifted. For Prince William, the line had been drawn. His primary allegiance was no longer to the institution of the monarchy, but to the nuclear family he was building with Catherine. And the incident with Charlotte reinforced a lesson he had learned from his mother's life, that the firm, as the royal family is sometimes called, would always prioritize its own image unless forced to do otherwise. The Queen Consort's role became even more delicate. Her subsequent public engagements continued with professionalism, but the personal warmth that had been slowly developing between the two households cooled noticeably. For Princess Charlotte, life quickly returned to normal. She went back to Lambrook the next day, greeted by her friends who wanted to know where she had gone. Her answer, likely a simple, "I had to go see my granny," betrayed none of the geopolitical fallout her absence had caused. She remained the confident, spirited girl who was popular for her personality, not her title. But the security around her and around all the Wales children became impenetrably tight. New protocols were silently implemented, ensuring that no request, regardless of its source, could ever supersede the direct authorization of the parents. The royal guard